Welcome back, you wonderful human being, to another episode of The Pursuit of Freedom. I just want to jump in here before I roll the episode and say g'day. Life has been pretty hectic. All the episodes you've been hearing have been pre-recorded because I knew that life was going to be pretty stressful. The solo episodes that I sprinkle in between the interviews, they're released as I record them, but the interviews have been done in the past. So you might hear me referring to I'm leaving my 9 to 5 when actually I left it months ago. You'll also notice, if you're quite observant, that I refer to the podcast in there as Find Your Freedom, because before I released it, I didn't check what other podcasts were out there. And there's actually quite a major one that's called Find Your Freedom, which is why the podcast is not actually called that. It's called The Pursuit of Freedom. But you get the idea. I'm going to stop talking. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see I've sneakily tried to blow the background because it is chaos here. I need to be out of the house in about 3.5 weeks. And yeah, things are messy. But I'm getting there and it's all right. Let's roll the intro. Enjoy. G'day and welcome to the Pursuit of Freedom podcast. I'm your host, Rosie Burrows, and I'm on a journey to find my freedom so that I can help you do exactly the same. Join me each week as I share the stories of everyday people who have found their own paths to freedom. I'm not going to focus on job titles and accolades because I don't care about that stuff, and neither should you. I want to uncover what truly makes you tick. Who are you when you step away from society's expectations and follow your heart? I still haven't figured it out yet. Have you? Either way, buckle up because it's going to be one hell of a ride. Joining me today is Sylva Florence. Sylva is a freelance writer, an editor and translator who hosts and curates her own podcast, Live from Suckville. She was born and raised on the west coast of the USA, and Sylva now calls Italy home. When she's not out exploring on foot or by bike, Sylva can be found trying to get her book about her solo bike tour across America into the hands of a deserving publisher. Sylva, thanks so much for joining me today.
It's lovely to be here.
Yeah, I feel the same. Now, you've got such an interesting story that it's a bit hard to know where to start. So I thought, let's start. Yeah, you're welcome. From the very beginning. Tell me about what you were like growing up. What was little Sylva like? Yeah.
Like when I was really little, or like when I was a teenager?
let's go right back. Take us on the journey.
I mean, I think I've always been a really outgoing person.
Uh-huh.
And I remember, if I'm not mistaken, my mom saying that like maybe she was worried about me going to kindergarten or preschool. I don't remember which one.
Yeah.
And then we went there and I just took off and like just immediately went, started playing and running around. And she was just like, okay. So I guess we could always say I was ready to go out and explore the world even from a small age.
Interesting. Yeah. And how about that transitioning into a teenager? Were you still that sort of outgoing, adventurous little kid?
Yeah, I mean, I sang a lot. I did singing competitions, so I was really into music. I was playing the piano, I was dancing. I rode horses too. Did some trail riding. And then I also I studied French in high school, so I went on a French trip in Europe when I was like 14.
Wow.
With like 30 other children on a bus. Jesus Christ, like the poor teachers. Can't imagine being them. Trying to keep 30 children not getting lost in France or whatever, who speak like, not so much French.
Yeah. As an ex-teacher, I'd agree. Those poor teachers. It's yeah. It's not easy.
Yeah, for reals. And I also went on at that point I was still kind of involved in church. I've since kind of stopped going to church, although I'm still very spiritual. But I went on a couple of mission trips in Honduras and Guatemala and in Mexico.
Wow. Yeah, so what did you do on those trips?
We built, in Mexico and Ensenadas, we built schools. We retarred roofs. We painted.
Wow.
Also in Guatemala and Honduras, we went to like an orphanage and helped. We went to Guatemala City and passed out like water purification tablets and blankets and things like that, and especially to the people who are working in gathering like bits of sellable stuff out of the trash heaps in Guatemala.
That must have been really rewarding work, like hard work, I imagine, but also really rewarding.
It was interesting. It was definitely interesting.
Yeah.
So,
Now,
I mean, I always wanted to see the world. I think I always had that desire to go out and explore.
Yeah. So have you traveled much since then?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Silly question.
I mean, I feel, well, when I graduated high school, I was one of the younger kids in the class. I was 17. And I moved, I did my first year of school in Oregon, where I grew up, where I finished high school, etc. And then I went to study my second year in Pennsylvania, my third year and fourth year in Virginia.
Wow.
Because I just wanted to see the other side of the country.
Yeah. That's so brave.
Crazy Sylva and her spontaneous decisions, you know.
Yeah. So is spontaneity something that shows up in your life a lot?
I would say so.
Yeah.
I would say so.
Yeah. Because I know you've said to me in the past, you've had a million jobs and you've never quite been able to settle. So tell me a bit more about that. What's that journey been like for you?
How much time do you have?
We got all the time in the world.
I mean, I feel like I'm missing like dentist, doctor, and flight attendant probably. Yeah.
Checked everything else off.
Yep. Yeah.
Wow.
During high school, I worked on a paint crew for a little bit, like in the summer, like painting schools.
Yeah.
Babysitting, like everybody I feel like does some babysitting.
Yeah.
And then after high school and when I was in college, I was a wildland firefighter.
Wow.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
For like 6 or 7 summers, I did that.
Wow.
And then I became like a wilderness ranger, a trail crew member, a backcountry ski ranger. And then I transitioned to being like a waitress, a bartender, a caterer,
Right.
a barista at Starbucks, a catering manager after a while.
Wow.
I was working like 2 different restaurants, one that was barbecue and one that was fondue on the top of a ski hill. And then somewhere in there, I also drove vans from the airport to people's fancy condos.
Yeah.
And was loading bags in airplanes at the airport.
Wow. And what do you think? Why do you think you've done so many jobs?
I don't know. I think I never could subscribe to being like in a 9 to 5, like with very little vacation time and just working. Just didn't seem like life is supposed to be like that.
Yeah, I really resonate with that. Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I think you really do.
Yeah. I mean, this is the last week of my 9 to 5. Right? Yeah, huge. And it's so exciting. And I love talking to people like you who are just living life on their own terms. I mean, I don't know if you feel like that. Do you feel like you're living life on your terms? Because as an outsider, it totally looks like that.
I think I always just felt like I had to follow my own gut instincts and my curiosity and my adventurousness. It would never let me do something normal or boring. Like sometimes I'm like, what is being bored like? I should try that. I should try it sometime.
I don't recommend it.
Because now that I've moved to Italy too, which about 5 years ago on my own, now I've also become like an English as a second language teacher, a translator, an interpreter, a bike tour leader. Then I've always been a bit of a freelance writer, copy editor, on and off.
Yeah. So you're like a creative adventurer. That's the best kind of combination I can think of.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Something like that.
And do you
Yeah.
think, where do you think this comes from, this desire to just try new things? Like, is this something that was instilled in you as a child?
I don't know. I mean, I think my parents probably helped because they took us on lots of road trips, and we had like all over the United States, and we had Rotary foreign exchange students stay with us. It's like an international kind of, they say it's like an international rich guy group, but my family's not that rich.
Yeah, yeah.
We're comfortable, but like not rich.
Mm,
Never
mm,
have been. But it's like a charity kind of organization. They help try and eradicate polio in India and all this. They do a lot of stuff for their local communities.
mm.
So we had foreign exchange students stay with us when we were younger too, like from Finland, Slovakia, France, Argentina.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean,
Mexico.
yeah, that would have been a pretty cool experience for a kid growing up. I
Yeah.
imagine not all of your friends had that same experience.
No, I imagine not actually, when I think about it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I don't know, my parents have always been very supportive of me and my wacky ways.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I never felt like, they were disapproving of me, and all of my moving around and trying new things and being spontaneous. So
Yeah.
I'm really lucky in that regard that I have supportive, open-minded parents
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
family.
Yeah, because I think when you're faced with people who aren't supportive of you, it makes it even harder. I'd be curious to hear your take on this, but I find change really hard. I love it, but I find it really hard.
Mm.
You've navigated a lot of change. Is it something you find difficult, or is it just easy peasy?
I mean, I don't think change is necessarily easy for anybody,
Mm.
but for me, it's always an opportunity to reinvent and to look and see, like, well, was what I was doing before working for me? Why? Why not? And to definitely learn and grow, learn new things about myself, learn how to bounce back quicker. I mean, I lost my job again in January, and so I'm between jobs again. The
Yeah.
1000th reinvention of Sylva. And since I've done it so many times, I think I'm much more comfortable with risk and uncertainty than a lot of people.
Yeah.
Like, especially uncertainty, you just have to embrace it because you can't really do anything about it. And if you think about it, we're not actually in control of very much anyways.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that doesn't have to be depressing. That can be,
Right.
interesting.
Yeah.
Something to sit with, something to explore.
And get better
Something
at
to,
dealing with the events that life just throws at you.
yeah.
But I always like to think, whilst there's a lot of things out of our control, I feel like there's also plenty of things that are within our control.
Yeah.
Like all your decisions to try these different jobs and even moving to Italy and starting your podcast, like they're all choices you made, which I feel like is such a good thing to do. Like, what would you say to people who are feeling overwhelmed with life at the moment and just feeling like, oh my God, what's the point? Everything's out of my control. Why should I even bother? Like, I'm just going to stay in my boring old job and that's it.
Well, maybe part of why it feels so overwhelming and out of control is the fact that you are doing something that you're not really excited about. And so maybe you've kind of subconsciously given up. So it might be just trying to go back and look inside of yourself and see what it is that would make you feel less overwhelmed. What would give you joy, what would make you happy. And trying to like find that trail again and follow it a little bit, even if it means like taking up a new hobby for a while.
Yeah.
'Cause changing your job can be really overwhelming for a lot of people. I realize that even though I'm weird and I change it like I change my shoes. But yeah, just starting with something small, making a small change and like seeing how it sits with you. Like it gives you a sense of lightness, it's usually a right. And if it gives you something heavy, then it's maybe something to kind of think about. Is this really the right thing for me?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really useful advice. And you brought up thinking about what brings you joy. What brings you joy?
Being alive.
Oh, love that. Yeah. And what makes you feel alive?
I mean, I would say that the common thread in a lot of this stuff that I've done has been like meeting new people, learning from new people, because I kind of do see everyone that is in front of me, even briefly, as some sort can teach me something about myself, about the world, about my experience here. So I think it's a lot about probably connection is a very interesting thing to me. Adventure, obviously. Discovering new things, also about myself. Discovering new things that I can do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
So what?
I built a shamanic drum this year. I had no idea I could do that. So cool.
Wow. I don't even know
Yeah.
what that is. Tell me more.
Oh, it's a big drum that's made out of oh no, I don't know how to say it in English. This is what's happened to me. I'm forgetting my English vocabulary. Oh, beach.
Yeah, right.
And you basically you use a hide. So we used
Yeah.
goat skin.
Uh-huh.
And there's a whole long like procedure. It took like 2 days to make this
Wow.
drum. I had no idea I could make a drum.
That's so cool.
It was so cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And I want to go back. You mentioned connection and that connection is very interesting to you, and it sounds like it's an important theme. And I'm all about connection. That's one of the reasons I've started this podcast, is to connect with people and, hear their stories. So what does connection mean to you?
Maybe realizing that we're not like these completely separate objects just kind of bouncing around on our own. We're actually all very connected. And I really do think that, the plants, animals, and us, we're all the same. We're all part of the same organism. So the more that you can meet people, try to understand them, get to know them, you can see yourself in them, they can see themselves in you. And it's just a way to, I don't know, maybe in my really small way, to like try and reconnect a really fragmented world. To try and create like love and connection where there's just been a lot of breaks and a lot of like me versus you and them versus us and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
I
I'm
think
a really
that's
tolerant, like accepting person. And I think if we could all be a bit more like that, it would be incredibly helpful.
I agree. Yeah. And what a beautiful way to view the world as well. Like, thank you for sharing that. I love it. I'm going to have to listen back to this episode and probably quote that bit. Like, I love that. Such a beautiful way of seeing the world. And would you consider yourself more of an independent person, or do you like going on these adventures with other people? Like, where do you lie on that spectrum?
I'm probably more on the independent side. I mean, I'm really extroverted, so I love to be around people. Really, really. Like it like charges me. I feel like there's either
Yeah.
people who it like drains them or it charges them. It definitely gives me more energy. But I also really, really love to to do things on my own and to be alone with myself. Like I definitely also need to do things by myself, in nature, alone, etc. So probably both.
Yeah. I like that answer. It's not really a black and white thing.
But I know when I need my time. Like I know when I need to go recharge my batteries alone on my bike or out in the woods or take a trip on my own.
And it's important to recognize that. Like, what does it look like for you? What are some of the red flags when you go, oh, uh-oh, I think I need some time to myself, time to recharge?
Probably I just start feeling a bit off. I don't know. I just start maybe getting a little irritated with people or there's no really reason for it. Or I just feel like a craving. I just want to go I'm somebody who really spends a lot of time outside in nature. And so I literally feel just like a physical need to be outside, like pretty much every day. But sometimes I really just need to go take my bike and my tent and my water filter and go disappear into the woods for a couple of days.
That sounds amazing.
Important. Contact with nature is very important.
Yeah. No, I agree. And speaking of nature, can you tell me more about this solo bike tour that you did? Take us back to where on earth did this idea come from, and just take us through that whole experience, because it sounds amazing to me.
I mean, I've always my ex-husband got me into biking. So like in 2005. I mean, actually I liked bikes before then because I moved to Colorado after college with a suitcase and a bicycle. But
Yeah, right.
he taught me how to like really be a good cyclist, road biker and mountain biker. We went on a lot of bike tours together in like in other countries, in Asia, in Mexico, in the States, in Europe, and also in the backyard, like in backcountry stuff in Colorado and Utah, and et cetera, et cetera. So I think I had the bug really bad for bike touring as it was, especially after I started working kind of part-time as a bike tour leader in 2009, which I don't really do anymore, but it was a on and off thing for many years. And when we split up in 2017, I wasn't really sure what to do, actually. I didn't have a plan. I kind of have always had Italy in the back of my mind because I really just felt drawn here for whatever reason. But I didn't really know how to make the move happen, and I didn't know what else to do. So I decided to ride my bike across the United States while I was figuring it out.
Wow. Yeah.
So I started from Berkeley, California, and I rode to Florida.
Wow. And for people who aren't familiar with the US like me, how far is that?
Well, first I rode down from Berkeley to San Diego, which I think is about 800 miles, maybe.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And then, or maybe I might be exaggerating a little bit because I'm really bad with like numbers.
You're
Don't
allowed to.
completely quote me. And then I rode across, so the very southern. I took what's called the Southern Tier route. So through Eastern California, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, Louisiana, a little tiny sliver of Mississippi and Alabama, and then Florida.
Wow.
And it's in total it was about 4,000, I don't know, maybe 4,200 miles.
Wow.
It's like 6,000 kilometers.
Yeah, I was just doing the conversion. Yeah. 6,700, just over 6,700.
Oh, okay, it's even
wow.
more. Been underquoting myself for years.
Yeah, you need to exaggerate a bit more. So, how long did this adventure last? Like, that's a lot of miles, a lot of kilometers. How long did you take to do that?
About 4.5 months.
Wow, I was expecting you to say longer. Like, that to me sounds really fast.
I think I had a pretty decent, I was very in shape. I was doing like maybe 250 miles a week on average.
Yeah. I can't even imagine that. And is this something you trained for, or you just kind of, I guess you were cycling before, weren't you? That was always an interest. Yeah.
Well, I mean, since I'm always wanting to go hiking and biking and skiing and all this stuff, I always keep myself pretty in shape because I want to be able to do all of this stuff.
Yeah. And
but as you ride, obviously, when you do one of these big bike tours, you just ride and ride, and you ride yourself into even better shape. So
yeah. How did you plan this trip? Was it something someone had told you about, or you just kind of conceptualized it yourself and went, "Yep, let's go"?
Well, I have definitely like planned my own tours completely, unmapped, etc. This one is a pretty famous route. Like it's a route of the American Cycling Association. So they have maps that I bought that I followed to get across from San Diego to St. Augustine, Florida, with a few detours and, random things that I wanted to see that weren't on the map.
Yeah.
But the California coast, I just mainly followed the coast more or less, and use Google Maps a little bit and ask locals, things
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. And how was the experience? Did you ever get sick of cycling?
I mean, yeah, I feel like in a long bike tour like that, you go through pretty much every emotion that there is because it'll just like tear it out of you too because it
Yeah.
is difficult. So yeah, there was a part where in Texas, I got stuck in Texas for a while because I had a knee problem.
Oh, no.
And I was like, I don't know, maybe I should just stop. And then I was like, no, I don't want to. But then I was like, oh, but then it would be kind of nice because maybe I could start moving to Italy sooner.
Mm.
But I'm somebody who's really stubborn and I don't really give up very easily. So I had
Yeah.
to finish it.
Yeah. Wow. And what are some standout memories for you from that cycling tour?
Ah, man. In Big Sur at the beginning when there was a bunch of mudslides that had closed the highway
Yeah.
because of
Wow.
wildfires. That's the one I'm
There
going
we
to
go.
choose. And so I snuck through a closed landslide at night because I didn't
Wow.
want to ride like a 200-mile detour.
I don't blame you.
So I had to sneak by like after midnight. It was really entertaining.
Wow. That sounds really cool. I mean, no wonder you wrote a book about this.
Yeah.
Tell me more about this book.
It's the inner and outer journey of Sylva. She makes her way across the United States through California heat waves and snow in Louisiana, a
Wow.
blizzard in Louisiana, and all these crazy people I met that helped me along the way, and rabid dogs in the southeast of the United States. Not very fun.
Wow.
Had no idea that that was coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's the whole story of everything that happens. And since I had just gotten divorced not long before, I was pretty much a mess.
Yeah, as you would
But
be.
but I wrote it out, and actually by the time that I got to the end, I was feeling like myself again, more or less. So,
Yeah. Pretty
and I had a
therapeutic
plan
then.
to move to Italy too, because I planned it while I was writing.
Wow. And had you written a book before?
Um, I've always written, period.
Okay.
Like I've always had a
Yeah, yeah.
blog, I've always had the desire to write a book. I started writing like a bunch of other books that never got finished. Actually, I did write a fantasy book.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and I never did anything with it, but a couple people read it and liked it.
Yeah, wow. That's so cool. Like I'm getting the feeling that you've just got this theme of creativity throughout your life. What do you think was different this time in that I mean, you wrote the fantasy book, but you said you've started a few other books that you haven't finished. What do you think was different about this one?
Um, well, I think I probably had also reached the age where I felt like I could write a whole book and
Okay.
actually like stick to it and finish it. Maybe the fantasy book was like a practice book for this book, you know? I just felt like it was a story that needed to be told. I still do. I still think it's a story that needs to be shared with a larger public because it's like a hopeful story and a story of empowerment and the things that are possible when you take on something that you don't think that you can take on, but you actually deep down do, and you do it, and like all the good things that it can bring you. It's also a love story about America too, because it's a country that's very divided right now, but it's actually much less divided than it thinks.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it sounds like a powerful book with a powerful message. I mean, where's this publisher to publish it? I'm impatient.
It's a good question. It's a good question. They're out there looking for me as I'm looking for them.
Yeah. What's that journey been like trying to get published? I imagine it's not an easy one.
No, and I've had like learning Italian, learning to be an English teacher, immigrating to Italy, bureaucracy, everything else in the middle of it. So it's been a very long, drawn out process. But Yeah. Right now I'm in the stage where I'm looking for agents and just getting rejected a lot, but that's kind of part of the process.
Yeah.
So you just
Yeah.
take it in stride.
How do you cope with that? I feel like I'm the person who would take that really personally and I'd need time to recover after each rejection. Ha-
Sometimes, I don't know. Sometimes, yeah, sometimes it does kind of like get you more than others, but also they really do say if you're getting rejected, then you're in the middle of the process. So, and also like I'm actually kind of getting tired of looking at this book and I just want somebody to publish it already. It's been so long looking at it and editing it and rewriting it over and over. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Because when did you finish writing the book?
Uh, um, Kind of hard to remember when exactly that year was. Maybe in 2020 or 2021,
Yeah. Yeah.
something
Oh,
like that.
it's ready to get out into the world.
Yeah, like I finally just said, okay, enough rewriting.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned that it's about empowerment and also a love story, but can you tell me more about the empowerment part of it and what that shows up like in the book?
I mean, I think you can follow my journey as I go along, like in a physical sense. You can also follow all of the emotional stuff that was going on, all the forgiveness that I needed to do, all of the letting go, all of the working through things and figuring out who I was again, like as a human being separate from this other person I'd been with for 11 years. So, the empowerment part is that, I was able to ride my bicycle from California to Florida in the end, and I was able to solve all of these problems and fix some things when they broke, not all of them. And obviously, I just want to say that it was probably a whole lot easier for me because I am a white woman. I think it would have been much more difficult if I was colored. And that's just an unfortunate fact of the world as it is in the US as it is right now. Because, I didn't have any worries about, unfortunately, like if I stopped in somebody's driveway to ask them for directions, they were probably going to give them to me. And I still had to be very careful because I'm a woman, traveling alone as a woman. But I just want to say that I had it a bit easier than some people would have.
Yeah. I mean, it's important to acknowledge, right? All of
Yeah, yeah.
our journeys are different. So, yeah, thank you for bringing that up. And how did it feel to get through all the ups and downs of that journey? Like, I'm sure, it sounds like there are a few challenges on the way. You're dealing with, a breakup and, all these emotions, plus you're cycling like 400 miles a week and facing all sorts of things. Like, looking back on it, how do you feel about that?
No, I'm happy I did it. It was an amazing adventure, and actually, I would really
Yeah.
like to do another one, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I don't know. Since I've moved here, I have traveled a lot in Italy, and also in some parts of Europe. I went to Israel, Greece, places like that. But I very often have a limiting situation with my residence permit. I'm not even going to get
Right.
into it because it's just so much bureaucracy. But when I'm waiting for it every time, when I don't actually have it in my hand, I can't leave Italy.
Right.
And so I've strangely limited myself quite a bit by being here, and that's sometimes quite frustrating.
Oh, I can
But
imagine. Yeah.
someday, someday it won't be like this. So it's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Would you ever do a bike tour of Italy?
Definitely. I've done a lot
Yeah.
in Italy, like after,
Okay. Yeah.
because here we had a crazy lockdown. Like we were in our houses
Yeah.
for like at least 2 months. And I was running the stairs to stay in shape
Wow.
and doing push-ups, and the neighbors thought I was crazy. But I planned a bike tour like while I was, holed up. And as soon as we
Yeah.
could, like the day we could leave, I left on my bike for like 21 days and
Cool.
rode
Yeah.
down to the southern tip of Tuscany. So
Wow. Yeah.
Always looking for another bike tour.
Yeah. Cycling sounds like it's quite therapeutic for you.
Very. Yeah,
Yeah.
very.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It makes me want to cycle.
You should.
Yeah,
Cycling is
I might have to
cool.
give it a go. I used to do triathlons.
Oh,
So
then you know a little bit.
there's a bit of cycling. I don't know what kind of bike you ride on, but I had a road bike with the triathlon bars, so you bent down. But I never
Yeah.
found it particularly comfortable, which I guess puts me off a little bit. But this whole thing of doing a long bike tour sounds amazing.
That bike
Sounds
is a bit
amazing.
more upright. It's not because the tri bike is just so aerodynamic.
Yeah,
Like the whole
yeah,
point is just being like really fast and aerodynamic.
yeah, yeah.
So the touring bike is much more upright so you can look around
That
and
sounds
it's
so much
heavy.
better.
So
Yeah,
it's not
okay.
like you're necessarily trying to go really fast on it.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
And I've never been on a bike tour, but can you share with me what was the typical day like when you were doing this big tour across America? What was a typical day like on this tour?
That's like kind of a fun question. Um, well, I would get up wherever I was. Either maybe I would have found a place for my tent.
Uh-huh.
That was ideal. Or maybe I was very rarely, but sometimes like in a hotel or with a Warm Showers host. Warm Showers is like a hospitality-based network for
Okay.
long-distance cyclists.
Mm-hmm.
So I would get up, I would repack everything, which if I had the tent and everything, it would take like a good hour to repack my bags and the tent and everything else. Eat breakfast first, hopefully at a sunny picnic table.
Mm.
And then I would get going. I would check maybe like every once in a while, I would check my bike, some of the bolts. I would check the tires, see if they needed air, just see if there was anything, amiss. And I would start riding. And then at some point, I would stop for a snack, then stop for lunch. Probably fix a flat, who knows?
Yeah.
There's a lot of flats going across. I had to replace both tires at one point.
Oh, wow.
And then I would I carried a lot of food with me because I didn't want to be eating out like all the time because I was trying to save money. So I would find a place to stop and make dinner, or I would grab something, or I would go to the store. Then I would find a place to sleep, which maybe I would have already lined up, but if it was like an area where I knew I was going to be able to camp, I would just find a spot, set up the tent, watch the stars, go to sleep.
Oh, sounds beautiful.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I really liked it. I love the freedom of being a bike tourist. Like a very like a self-contained unit.
I like that you brought up freedom. As you know, the title of the podcast is Find Your Freedom. And I'd
Yeah.
love to hear your thoughts on what freedom means to you.
I mean, it's like I would say it's the ability to be able to, it's not like not being attached to anything, not having any strings for me, even though I do find it kind of hard sometimes to like stay in one place, obviously. But I think it's just the ability to be able to to change your mind or to change your course or to change your hairstyle or to change your opinions or to change the freedom to me is like the flexibility and ability to make changes when you think that they're necessary or you want to. You're never stuck. Because I don't really think that we are actually ever stuck. We just think we are.
Yeah, it's an interesting point because I like to think that no matter the situation, and it's going to look different for everybody, but no matter the situation, I think we always have a choice. And this box of choice might be bigger for some people than others, and others it might be quite restricted, but there's always a choice in what life throws at us. And they might not necessarily be the choices we want, but we have a choice. And I think if we frame it that way, it gives us a sense of empowerment. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we did say that we're not in control of a lot of things, meaning that, like, of course, the world is constantly changing and there's all of this stuff going on and there's a million, billion, trillion of us all making our own decisions and things. But there is also kind of a flow to things, too. And so, to me, freedom is also learning how to kind of navigate this flow and to note when there's resistance, and to note when things are flowing better, and to kind of, keep that in your mind, like what it feels like when things are flowing well and what it feels like when there's resistance and there's a lot of things are backed up. And freedom kind of helps you to navigate that too, because it's a feeling of lightness. Like I said, it's a feeling of excitement, it's a feeling of joy, it's a feeling of probably satisfaction. And these are the feelings that will kind of keep you in this flow, where this flow that you have more control of than you think.
I like that description. Yeah. And I feel like this ties in, well, I think it does. Let's see if you do. But I feel like it ties in with, the podcast you launched, and there's a story behind, what was going on for you at that time when you launched it and why you launched it and what it's about. So can you share with us the lead up to this podcast? Like, what was it that happened and what made you think, I'm going to start a podcast?
I broke my hip socket on my bicycle. Yeah, riding my bicycle, of course. Of course, because it's kind of anybody who's like been a cyclist for a long time knows that getting injured is unfortunately kind of part of the game. And so it's being able to get back on the bike.
Right.
But in the meantime, there was like 4 or 5 months where I couldn't do anything. So I wanted to like turn that experience into something positive, into something even maybe useful, not only for me, but for others who are struggling, going through things. So I created Live from Suckville with the idea that Suckville was just where I was. And so I was broadcasting live and trying to collect stories from people, give people a space to be heard and understood when they're about their own struggles and their own experiences. Because I really do feel like that's an important thing to do. And so now I have this podcast. It's got 11 episodes as of today.
Awesome. Congratulations.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And I hope it goes on forever and ever.
Me too.
Yours too.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. And I mean, tell me more about why it's so important to you. You mentioned, about people's stories and that you think it's important to do this work. Can you tell me a bit more?
Everybody just wants to be heard and understood, I feel like.
Right. Yeah.
That's what we all crave. And there's not so many opportunities for people to talk about hard things, even like taboo things, like losing people, like suicide, like depression, like any number of things that we all go through. And so by kind of like shedding light on the dark stuff, you make it not so dark, and you help people to be seen, understood, to feel like they're not alone.
Yeah.
Like, these things are very, very important, I think, in our lives, to know these things, to know that other people have gone through, what you've gone through, and that you can't maybe just talk about it at a party or something,
Right. Yeah.
But
that really resonates with me.
To.
You do. Yeah. And I think it's so freeing when you can talk about it and you're actually given a voice. I know for me, when I talk about the hard things I've been through, it's like liberating in a way.
Podcast.
Exactly.
There's going to be a Rosie episode.
Future episode coming.
So excited. Collaboration.
Yeah. And I mean, just coming on your show and being able to talk about the death of my parents was liberating. Not that it's an enjoyable topic, but it's therapeutic to be able to talk about it And it brings me joy that maybe there's someone out there who has been through something similar, and it will give them a sense of feeling less alone, because it can feel so lonely when we're in those dark times.
Yeah, Suckville is a lonely place sometimes, but we're trying to make it less lonely.
Exactly.
I keep saying we, like I'm more than one person, but anyways.
Well, I think there's a community, right? I'm part of your community now, so
we the community.
Yeah.
We the community.
Yeah, and you're spearheading it. I think it's a great project and something I'm really passionate about.
Yeah, because the other thing I wanted to say is that life can really suck, like really, really suck, but it can also be like really, really beautiful.
Yeah.
And it can also be those things at the same moment, more or less.
Yes. Yes.
And I feel like we spend a lot of time pretending that everything is great and trying to project that really beautiful, perfect side of life while almost trying to like avoid the other side. And it's okay. Both of them should be embraced. And so like Suckville is about that like weird, crunchy, beautiful little paradox in the middle.
Yeah.
Where we all kind of live.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We do all live there, right? Why do you think as people we try to avoid the less nice stuff? Why do we want to avoid that?
Because it doesn't feel good, because it makes you think about your weird, bad stuff. Yeah. And it makes you have to deal with it too, you know? Makes you have to remember it.
Mm-hmm.
But there's so many like nuggets of goodness and truth and growth and encouragement, empowerment in those areas. And so if we ignore all of those dark corners and everything, we miss out on like half of the richness of life.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way of putting it. Missing out on half the richness of life. Like, it's so true. Through the hard things I've been through in life, whilst it might not feel like it at the time, usually when I look back, I can see the beauty too that has come out of it and the personal growth. So I think...
Yes, exactly.
It can't always be seen as a bad thing. Yes, it sucks and it's hard. Yeah. You can't discount that, but there's a lot more to it. It's multifaceted, and it's a part of us, and it's gonna keep happening. I hate to say it, but these shitty things are gonna keep happening. So we might as well learn how to ride that wave.
Yeah, and how to see it as a place where you come and you go. Mm-hmm. Maybe you're in Suckville for a while and then you're back. Mm-hmm. Then maybe you go back again. But it's never something that lasts forever.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah. That's true.
It's temporary, like everything. Even the good times are temporary. So
yeah. Yeah.
You might as well learn how to like embrace them all.
Yeah. That's great advice. And I want to ask...
the wacky world of Sylva, yeah.
I love the world of Sylva.
Thanks.
And Sylva, can you share, how do you get through these difficult times? Like, I feel like what we've been talking about are all examples of how you get through it, but what do you think is the common thread when you're thrown into Suckville? How do you navigate that and just keep moving forward?
Well, I mean, there's always a period at first when you just really need to be pissed off and like cry and be frustrated and, figure out new ways to get all of that out, but just to let it all happen too, like to not block it, to be sad, to be angry, to be whatever. Mm-hmm. But then at a certain point to think, okay, so I've done that. Maybe I still feel a little bit of that, but I'm starting to feel a little bit of less of that. So what do I want to do with this space that's been created by whatever it is that I just lost or that I just went through or whatever? Like, how do I want to, use this experience to move me forward? Like, how do I want to transform it into something else? Mm-hmm. Because every ending, every quote unquote death is really a new beginning of something. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so if you can start to see it that way and not force yourself to see it before it's too early to see it, because really there's just going to be a period of total shit first.
Yeah.
But that's okay. And then you can figure out what you want to do with it.
Yeah.
Because you don't have to stay the victim. You don't have to stay in that experience. You can also choose to see it as something that's going to help you. And something that you can transform. So that's what I try and do. I try and find new solutions to every problem, because I've always had like so many random problems. So I've always had so many random new solutions.
Yeah. Which is a great way to look at it. And I like that you acknowledged, it's going to be shitty at first.
Oh, yeah.
And you got to feel those feelings. It is going to feel shit, but you can find a way.
And they might come back too at some point and just kick you in the ass.
Probably
one night.
will. Yep.
Yeah. And then you can say, okay, I still have a little bit of this to work on, but that's all right.
Yeah.
Hello, anger. How are you today?
I'm laughing because it's so relatable.
Yeah.
Very
now knowing
relatable.
a bit more about you, I could understand.
Yeah.
We each have it. We all have our things.
Definitely. Yeah. And would you say you have any values or principles that help you decide when you're navigating change in life, like decide what you're going to do next? Like, for example, you chose to do the bike tour across America. You chose to move to Italy. What helps guide you to make those decisions?
I suppose luckily I have a very good connection with my own intuition and sense of self and sense of, what I, in a way, would like my life to look like. And so I basically just choose what feels right to me and what I want to do, like what I am curious about, what I want to do, what I want to see, where I want to go.
Yeah.
Because I feel like life is like, I think maybe we have more than one crack at it. Like maybe we come back as a butterfly. Who the flip knows? I don't really know. But just in case, I think it's to be lived and experienced to the very fullest. So I think I always have that in my mind too.
Yeah. To be
No
lived and
regrets.
experienced to the fullest. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like
I
the
love
world
that.
is my oyster.
Yeah. Yeah. It's said a lot, but I don't think people truly grasp the world is your oyster.
Yeah.
It's going to look different for everybody, but there's so many opportunities. And I always say to people who are they just seem overwhelmed and stuck in choosing what direction to go next. I think, you sound like someone who's very clear on the kind of life you want. But if a person doesn't have that clarity, I think the first thing they need to do is get clear on what's important to them. Like, give themselves some time to actually think about it and like, oh, well, what is important to me? What do I want my life to look like? Because sometimes we just get caught up and swept away in the day-to-day and we end up someplace that doesn't really feel right, but then we're not sure what we actually want. And I was talking to someone on another episode, Neve Sullivan, and she was talking about, because I was talking about this, like figuring out what you want to do, because sometimes it's really overwhelming. I know for me, 10 years ago, I was like, I don't fucking know. Like, Jesus.
Yeah, it is overwhelming.
Yeah, and a bit of advice she gave, which I thought was cool, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on what you think about it, is, well, first of all, think about what you don't want. It's usually quite easy to go, I don't want a life like that. No, thank you. And then it can help you at least take some steps forward in figuring out, well, what do you want?
It can be a good place to start with what you don't want, but I think it's even better to figure out what you do want.
That's pretty important, isn't it?
Yeah. And since I'm a writer, that's the one thing that my entire life has always written and always been a writer. So when I'm feeling confused about something, I'll just go find like a quiet place, usually in nature, with a pen and a paper, and I'll set a timer for like 10 minutes and I'll just write, like stream of consciousness. Not thinking, who cares about punctuation, spelling, whatever.
Yeah.
Then I'll forget about it for a couple of days, and I'll have like in my head, like the question, like, what do I want to do next? Then I'll go back and read it and see if I can figure out any sort of themes, and I'll highlight and I'll circle and I'll cross things out. And you can do that a few times. You can do it over a few weeks or a few months even, and see if you come up with any themes, any things that keep coming up, things that resonate, things that don't. Can be a good exercise. And then I think that the most important thing to do next is just to decide on something.
Oh, yeah.
Because also, like, your decision is not like the last decision you're ever going to make. If you don't like it, you can make another decision.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So don't get too hung up on like making the right decision.
Yeah, that's such good advice. The writing part of it is so true. I really think each of us has the answer inside of us. We just got to get it out somehow. So this whole stream of consciousness writing.
What your way is.
Yeah, exactly. Trust yourself, you know it. And I think writing's a great way to do that. It's certainly something I've tried as well. And it often surprises me. I'm like, oh, wow, that came out of me. I'm quite clever.
I'm so smart.
Yeah, exactly. It feels good. Or sometimes you go, what the heck? Like clearly I was having a bad day.
Yeah.
But your point too about just make a decision. Like, I think we need more of a bias towards action. I know for me, I often get in my head and I overthink things and think, what if, it could go wrong? What are other people going to think? But if you don't make a decision, nothing's going to change. And that decision isn't for life. It's just your next decision. And if you don't like it, you can change your mind.
Yep.
Like, yeah, I think that's important. For me, it's something I've forgotten. You can change your mind, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can always reinvent yourself again.
Exactly. And I think that's a great thing.
But
it does, yeah.
Always interesting every time.
Definitely interesting. And a sign of growth, I think, as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. Now, before we sign out, is there a parting message or something you'd like to say to our listeners?
On any particular theme?
No, I'm putting you on the spot here. Anything. It could be something we've been talking about in this podcast or something that just come to your head. What's your parting thoughts?
Be kind to one another. Like, see that each person that you see, even if they're being super freaking annoying, has gone through something or probably is going through something. And just, like, treat them with kindness.
Yeah.
Be kind to each other.
Yeah. Be kind to each other.
And
on that note,
and
thank
laugh,
you so much.
Laugh.
Yes.
Always find reasons to be stupid and laugh.
Oh, I love it. Be kind.
Be a child.
Yeah. Be kind. Find ways to be stupid and laugh. And be a child. That needs to be a quote. Yeah. Thank you so much for talking today. I've really enjoyed hearing your story, and you've dropped lots of nuggets, so much wisdom, and I look forward to having you back on sometime in the future.
Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, likewise.
Also for me.
If this episode resonated with you at all, could I please ask that you share it with a friend who you think could get value from it? And whilst you're doing that, make sure you follow and subscribe to the podcast so that you never miss another episode. And whilst you're following or subscribing, please leave us a rating, preferably 5 stars, and also a written review. Doing each of these things is going to help this podcast reach more people and impact more lives, which is, at the end of the day, is what we're here to do. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Remember, you matter, you're worth it, and you are so, so capable. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you next week.